since there's this evolution in how we ought to be teaching, and we talked about standards and all of that. In the Bahamas, you all know about the Bahamas. You were educated in the Bahamas, but now you teach in the United States of America. Is there a need for us in the Bahamas to modernize the system that we are using? That's a lot of silence.
Well, you know, I'm silent because I am the Model T, right? So I have to wait for these young ones to tell us what's it like in the Bahamas now.
Yeah, but you see, because Dr. Taylor, you did extremely well at GHS, and many of you went to SAC. You did extremely well.
Yeah, I went to SAC too, by the way. I went to SAC also before.
Yes,
I am both of them.
I believe I have a lady in this embassy who put together these programs, you know, and I believe she has a bias towards SAC as well.
I see that, Mr. Jones. I'm the only non-soccer here. I'm seeing that.
Is there a need to modernize the system, or is our system in the Bahamas working? Because I'll tell you, there are a whole lot of people who went to the then College of the Bahamas, now the University of the Bahamas, who come to the United States of America and who excel, and they are model students and people in various institutions in the United States are very happy to receive them because of what they bring to these institutions in the United States. So it tells me that we are doing okay in our country. Is that right?
Yeah. Can I go quickly? I have to skip out for another meeting.
Yes, yes. But before, I want you to answer one question, Mr. Farrington, before you go. So give me 5 minutes, and just let's get through this one first.
Okay. I'll wait. All right, go ahead, Casey.
Yes. Casey,
Farrington, you go first. Go first if you have to leave.
Go ahead, Mr. Bethel.
You can go. I can wait for 5 minutes. I can wait for 5 minutes. I got it.
Certainly, there are pockets of great success, and we should be incredibly proud. I think that the system of education is working extremely well for the folks that it's working well for. We cannot be complacent as a nation either, because we have to figure out why it's not working for the folks for whom it's not working. And I lead my school with something I call a culture of continuous improvement. We're never going to be satisfied until we have 100% success for every student. And I would venture, that's a lofty goal, but that's where we set our target. Asking ourselves if we are to modernize the system to the degree that we are preparing our students for a modern world, we should, but do not change the expectations or change the outcome. We can modernize the delivery, but the expectation I don't think should ever change or will ever change. We need you to be literate. We need you to be competent. We need you to be able to interact with multiple diverse types of people. We need you to be a creative thinker and a problem solver. Those things have always been the case, should always be the case.
I think it's like one of the first things I thought is like, man, like when I did school, I have so much appreciation for my Bahamian education. Like I wouldn't be where I'm at today without a strong foundation delivered from St. Thomas More Primary School to St. Augustine's College. Like that is so important to me and where I'm at, and I still instill some of those things that I learned there. And I think a part of it is how do we? I think it would be really ill-advised for us to say we need to shake up the Bahamas, because I think there's so many people doing some good work there, right? And I think what we want to do is continue to, I hope, what we're learning from this system, what we're learning from, everybody knows some systems in Europe who are doing way better than all the American systems. How do we continue to learn from all the different education systems around the world to continue that and continuous improvement like Casey talked about? I always tell my staff, good is the enemy of great. Great is the enemy of excellent. And so how do we keep on going for excellent, right? And we can't be complacent because we're never good until we have that 100% success. We're not there yet.
Yeah, and I'll add on quickly. I do also have to hop off for a meeting that started 4 minutes ago. But I think, what was pointed out at the beginning of this discussion is that, the system works for who it works for. And obviously everybody on this call, it has worked for us in some way. And like Mr. Farrington, I credit so much of my success now to the education I got as a child at the various levels from, pre-K all the way up through graduating high school. And I think with knowing that we have very good pockets, searching within and figuring out, okay, how do we figure out what's happening in those good pockets and help those educators or those students collaborate with places that may be struggling, and seeing if we can use the knowledge we already have to start to make a difference. I think, that would be sort of just that first step, is to figure out what is the disparity. Is it within the schools? Is it at home? Is it a combination of both? Is it resources? Is it the education of the teachers themselves who are coming in? And start to sort of diagnose the problem. But I feel like I've been hearing for years about the problem, but I have not necessarily been hearing, well, what is being done? And it goes back to one of your original questions, Ambassador Jones, is about this standardization. I've also noticed that there is a trend in education where, kind of anybody can start a school. I've been seeing some things like that. So figuring out, is that happening, and then how are some of the standards falling? So really just looking for some of those gaps and using ourselves as a case study of what is working, and figuring out how to transfer that into the places where it's not working so well. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Dr. Dillette. Thank you so very much, Mr. Farrington. The rest of you don't go anywhere.
Thank you so much I really, really appreciate the space, and looking forward to the future ones. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. But let's continue now while I ask you about the impact of technology and the internet in education. A friend of mine who is a former Minister of Education in the Bahamas told me that there's no excuse to be dumb anymore, because we have access to the World Wide Web. Mr. Bessel, you raised your telephone several times talking about it and how impactful it is. Let's talk about the impact of technology and the internet on the system of education and how we teach.
It's chime in. I think it's very impactful, it's needed. To piggyback on the last question, I think that we need to control the narrative with everything. With the last question, we need to control the narrative. For years, I've been hearing about this D-average, and this is what we've been pushing as the narrative. But if you heard Mr. Bethel, his narrative for his school is, he didn't point out, what the bad things were. He said that we're going to keep striving until we get to 100. Mr. Farrington said the same thing. We need to watch the narrative that we are pushing for our kids, right? So we can set that environment and that culture for expectation and education, and not the first thing that they hear come out of our mouths is failure. So that's the last question. In terms of using the internet and everything that's going on in this world, I don't even use, I hardly use any books in my classroom, just because I want to engage the students. They spend half their time in the phone anyway. So I have an Instagram page for my band. I use apps to engage with them when I want to send them messages, because if I say it to them, it's probably going to go in one day and out the next. So I send messages, I engage on that level, because once again, you want to engage the people in the seats, and the people in the seats understand this. Mm-hmm. They speak this very, very well. They speak this better than they speak English. So you need to know the slang. You need to know, as we say in the Bahamas, you need to know the talks of today. You need to understand what those three letters mean when they say WYD and LOL and all other stuff that they use nowadays. You have to be able to speak the language in order to get across to today's young people. Because if you don't, I will tell you now, they will run circles around you in the classroom. They will run circles around you in your home. they will run circles around you in life because his life is moving fast, and you'll be, you know, in rooms and they'd be communicating and you wouldn't even realize what's going on.
Is that healthy for the system of education? Using these, as you mentioned, LOL and WID and all of these, the various jargons that people use. Are these things good for how we are seeking to teach?
I think that there's a time and place for everything, and we must keep the standard like everybody has said. But as educators, we still must be able to balance both, right? In certain rooms, you have to be able to speak the WIDs and the LOLs, but you have to educate your student that in other rooms, you need to turn that off and be able to speak the Queen's English, as we would say. So it's important to create balance in everything. It's important to create balance.
I want to pick up on something that Mr. Bailey so eloquently said, and distill it to this idea that every one of our young people is exceptional at something. The case is just that they might or might not be exceptional at the thing we want them to be exceptional at. How do we entice them to want to do education in the way that we see it, right? So that's one point. And then to answer the question about the internet, I think the internet is an incredible tool, but any tool is as good as its use. Any tool is as good as we put it to work for us.
Or as the user.
Or as the user, exactly. It gives us, so just to give one example, everyone has instant access to all the information, which is incredibly valuable. But then when you juxtapose that against the idea that it's easy to squander something that's easy, that comes freely, right? I remember as a boy, when I wanted to know something, I had to walk up Marquis Street Hill to the east, to the Eastern Library and sit in there and find the right book and the right encyclopedia and find the information, which made the information feel incredibly valuable. Nowadays, because young people have instant access to all the information is devalued in their mind. How do we get them to appreciate information? And then, like, I keep going back to this idea, what to do with the information. How do I put this information to use as a problem solver and as a critical thinker and as a content creator and as a collaborator and a communicator?
And just to add to that, like Casey said, embracing other areas, like I said, I'm in culinary, so embracing the technical and the vocational, because everyone isn't going to be good at everything, but they can utilize their skills and be great in that area. Because in order to make the Bahamas run, you still need those people, you still need the mechanics, you still need the chefs, you need the bankers, but you also need the doctors and lawyers. So just looking at that and just embracing technology. I know for us, we have a workforce of over 600, and we recently got tablets for them. Everyone may not know how to use the tablet, but it's just another resource. So when we progress with training, that they'll be able to utilize it, and it gives us an alternative to communicate with them.
Dr. Taylor, I want to engage you a little bit here, and others, please chime in on this as well. And I particularly called Dr. Taylor because he, as they say, might be old school in this regard. Dr. Taylor, you would remember that there was an elitist system in the Bahamas where, for instance, certain students went to your school, the GHS back in the day. And then, of course, there's mass engagement now in education. The question is, given this mass engagement that we now have, did it encourage or lend to mediocrity? Somebody mentioned the D average. Are we having that because of the mass access to education and what is being offered?
I think what's gonna have to happen, we have to realize that, you know, when you look at, say, a normal curve, right? You have people on this end that are very sort of gifted, right? And but then in the average, you know, the majority of people are in the average area, right? So what we were seeing during my time were the people or the kids who was on the top end, you know, because the opportunity was, that's the only way you could get educated, because you had to pass exam to go to SAC, right? Or to government. I don't know how I got in SAC, to be honest with you, but I got in there some way, right? So, but now we have to look at what has happened is that we're you know, probably in the Bahamas, and it's been a long time since I left the Bahamas, but probably in the Bahamas, they're dealing with the average, the people that are more average, right? So the educational system, you know, is gonna reflect that, as opposed to reflecting the, you know, the more gifted people or more talented people. And I would like to hear from the younger people here, like those that are the Nissan Altima and all that, because I'm the Model T, right?
Go ahead, Casey Bassett.
It sounds like Dr. Taylor was making a reference to sort of like the talented 10th philosophy, right? Where the most gifted in a community share the burden of uplifting the entire community, right? I want to say this, though. I do think that we want to have open access to education so that all individuals can be served. We want an education system that's working for the broader society. I recognize myself to have been blessed. I count much of my preparation to the schools I attended, both Palmdale Primary and St. Augustine's College, right? But I've written publicly here in the United States about how when we over-apply that idea, we got to be careful of an elitist mindset, right? When we over-apply that, then the individuals who don't get to attend certain institutions don't feel much future in store for them. We want a rising tide lifts all ships. If we improve the system itself, then we can improve all the schools so that every student can at least feel like they are competent and set up for success regardless of where they go. Because in most situations, the child is not in control of where they attend school anyway. Someone else is making that decision for them. So we owe it to them to provide the most exceptional academic experience for every child, regardless of which school they attend.
That equity, that egalitarianism, does it lend or encourage mediocrity in the system itself?
Excellent push. Excellent push. So how do we then balance these two, right? We don't want to slow the truly gifted from excelling while we allow everyone the opportunity to move forward. We focus on everyone's progress, right? We want to meet everyone where they are, which is something that a few people mentioned on this call already today. Meet everyone where they are and move everyone forward. We don't want to slow down someone else's progress either. So you ask a very pointed question and a very difficult one to answer, but I'm willing to stay firm on the idea that we want a powerful academic experience for all. If I had to choose.
And I would say too that I do agree with that, even though I was just stating that what was the case when I was there, right, in the Bahamas. But you see, the thing is, I think a society is much better off, right, if the majority of the people, you know, have educational training, rather than have some elitists and everybody have to turn to the elitists, for the elite person for everything, because you don't have the numbers and they can't move the society forward. You know, they can play a role, yes, but the society will not move if the majority, the people that I'm talking about that's around in the average area, if they don't have not been given certain educational skills, etc., right? And that's why I'll take, for instance, like these companies that move to the South, or that would probably move to Alabama, move to Florida. One of the things that they look at is, do you have a workforce that is well educated or educated to carry out the things that they want done, right?
And I think one of the things is that the Bahamas, as far as with education, you talk about education and may need to be a shift to where it's talked about a little bit more, because everyone says education is important. We pretty much know this. But one of the things is just from experience, I never really heard you need to go to college, but that's something that somehow I knew that was going to be the next step and the next level. So sometimes, once you have that message, education is important, it can then shift to a whisper to where, moving on to college and knowing that that's something that's attainable.
Let's talk about, there are many ways that one can educate oneself. And you heard, I'm sure, about people who are self-taught, because at the end of the day, education enables you how to live and how to socialize. I believe it was Mr. Bessel who earlier on spoke about education as a national security kind of topic. And in a whole lot of places, we hear about the antisocial person, or the extent to which the miseducated people, or people who are uneducated, being involved in crime or criminal activities. And I'd like to speak to that, Mr. Bessel, on the extent to which we ought to better educate our people so that they are not miseducated or undereducated in order to be productive citizens of the Bahamas.
You get 100% agreement from me. I think we got to go back to what the purpose of education ought to be, right? The purpose of education is for self-actualization, purpose of education, so that I can be my best self, right? And that's when that mindset is where we even more firmly connect to the idea that it's lifelong rather than finite, right? I'm continually trying to be my better self. Dr. Taylor opened up in his initial comment about preparing the workforce, right? We got to continue to tell young people that education is the thing that's going to prepare you to be successful and have a secure future. Now, whether that's working for someone or working for yourself, those things have changed. Whether that's in a traditional looking society like we've had in the past, or in a modern society where people are content creators, people are making use of the internet to do original things. All those are possible, but without those skills, you won't be able to get one of those jobs. You won't be able to provide for yourself. Is a message that will always be necessary. At the end of the day, if you don't hunt, you don't eat, and you have to learn how to hunt. Well, hunting isn't spares anymore. Hunting is, what skill do you have? What talent do you have? What knowledge do you have that you can then turn into a resource to provide for oneself? And that's the purpose of education. But I don't know that that message is being given strongly enough anymore, right? The kids that we teach, Mr. Bailey talked about teaching the person who's in the seat. So many of the kids that we teach latch on to the rare occurrences where there's someone who became popular and then wealthy on a whim, someone who had one small idea and they made it great. So then kids think, well, that could work for me. What we don't tell them is that's incredibly rare. For the vast majority of us, success is something that's attained through long sacrifice. And that has to be partnered with this idea of education as an investment in myself. rather than a quick way to turn an opportunity into wealth.
Yeah.
And yes, Mr. Bailey.
Yeah, Mr. Bethel is talking about some of the things that I try to talk about with my high school band students. Like, there is only one LeBron James. There is only one Michael Jordan. There's only one Kobe Bryant. And we need to, I think, a part of
only one Kanye West, only one Jay-Z, only one Beyonce.
Yeah. So we have to educate our students, and I use the word educate here because this is a part of education. We have to talk about these things, like, but we have to have these relationships so we can hear that our students are thinking about doing these things, because they have that option now to do these things, and they think that they can be the next TikTok star and get 1 million views, and boom, I can be rich. And there's this longing for likes and views now, right? But we need to make them understand and take them through the gamut of things. LeBron James can make that much money on his team because he's LeBron James. The other guys on that team ain't making that kind of money. You know, those guys who show up to work, who ain't making $1 million or the couple $100 million that LeBron has. All right. LeBron was also wise in that when he made his money, he had sense enough to invest his money in different things. All right. Have buy-in into education. And I think Mr. Bethel said something about identifying things in kids that we can use as the building point to take the literacy and the math and show them how we take these things, and you take that education, all those skills, and they help undergird the main skill that you have to make the main skill stronger, so that when you go to invest or put time into whatever your main skill is, your literacy, your math, your social studies, being aware of all these things and having fundamentals helps to make that main thing even stronger when you go into it as an entrepreneur or whatever it is you choose to do, right? Again, going back to the equity versus equality thing. You know, if you have a kid in there that's really good at something, or this is the class that they're really good at, as teachers, we need to not hone in on the really good kid. Let's look at the other kids and see how we can help let that really good kid help us make other kids just a little bit stronger.
Before we all go, let's talk about the importance of parental involvement in education. We have about 2 minutes.
It's most important.
Most important.
It is most important. The teachers and the administrators at school are like the assistant coach on the team. Yeah, they see us all day, but at the end of the day, the head coach is the one that controls the direction and vision for the team. The parents are most important.
The kids who are the most successful in school are the ones who come to school with an appreciation for education, ready to give their best effort, and they have to bring that with them from home. So the parents and the parent involvement and the parents' appreciation and belief in education is still paramount.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think we all would agree with that. That is so important. And even it's more important than coming from a rich family. It's coming from a family where parents, you know, send this message to the kids that your education is so important, and this is the way that you're going to have a better life, you know. And the kids pick up on that. Those that pick up on it, even though they might fool around at the beginning, you know, they will at some point probably do well.
Ms. Rowe, you have the last word.
Yeah, and definitely parents, they may not know exactly what's going on for every class, but asking about it. They don't need to do the work, but asking about it. You may be busy with work, but checking in with the teachers, how's the student doing, and just being involved as much as you can. It definitely makes a difference in their formative years.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so very much.
Can I ask you something?
Yes.
Just one more thing. This has been a group of really outstanding young Bahamians that we have, and one old one, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And so the thing that I'm wondering, because this kind of discussion should be going on in Nassau, in the Bahamas,
Well,
with the Ministry of Education.
It's going on. It's because they're listening to you by this broadcast that we have today, as well as future broadcasts. So I'm sure the word is getting out. So thank you so very much for participating today. And I'd like to thank all of the people here in the embassy in Washington, D.C., who participated in making this happen, particularly our executive manager here and Minister Councillor Sonia Rose for organizing these special events. Thank you so very much. And I'm sure it's appreciated by Bahamians everywhere who are listening and watching. Thank you very much.